This is the good. This is the feeling I've been looking for. I've been way too analytical about this crap. Remember the Athletic Football Podcast was the one where Nate Tice asked CJ Stroud to explain a couple of the plays that he ran this year, and CJ was just brilliant on it, and that went viral. That was on the Athletic Football Podcast a couple days ago. It was just Chase Daniel, the former NFL quarterback, and Robert Mays, who writes for The Athletic. Super bright guy, watches a lot of film, and they are very excited about the Texans free agency, talking about how the veteran players on the Texans would feel about the Danielle Hunter move and the Joe Mixon move, just the Texans' aggressiveness in picking up those guys.
If you're a player at home that plays for the Texans and you see the free agency they're having, like, capitalized by this Hunter signing, you're like saying, oh my God, like we are all in. And there's just a feeling amongst the team that, like, hey, we're not settling for just a playoff win. Like, that invigorates some guys, especially some veteran guys, because I've been a part of a team where they haven't really done anything in free agency, and they're like, oh, we'll just draft. And it's like, oh, okay, ho-hum. Like, we're just going to do the same thing over and over. But just from a standpoint of thinking from a player's perspective that's at home, that's maybe on a 3-year deal, that's looking at this, like, you are freaking pumped up.
Okay, so immediately there, I thought of the Astros players in 2017 when the Astros didn't make a move at the initial trade deadline, back when there were 2 trade deadlines. And, remember, like, Dallas Keuchel just flat out went public with it, right? And said that they were disappointed. They thought they were going to make a move or something. And then they go out and get Justin freaking Verlander. And if it hadn't been for the damn hurricane, especially, like, you can see how guys would get super pumped about that, especially when it's somebody like Justin Verlander. Danielle Hunter does not have the same resume that Justin Verlander had by the time he got to the Astros, but it is that kind of move. Like, when Chase said that, I was super glad that Chase said it, because it got me, it took me back and got me pumped up, thinking about, like, holy crap, yeah. Like, wow, you look around and your team is like, we're doing something here. And it gives you that little bit of extra invigoration. The other thing that happens too is when you sign the right kinds of guys in free agency, they feel that pressure to come in and not just be a leader vocally, but be a leader by example. Like, Danielle Hunter comes in here, and people in Minnesota love him, right? He's done everybody knows about Danielle Hunter in Minnesota. Comes to Houston, it's his hometown, and he's the right kind of guy, but he also probably feels a certain part of, like, having to prove himself to this team. And it's got a cumulative effect that's really cool. So I was really happy to hear Chase Daniel frame it that way instead of just necessarily making it about the X's and O's. And then this was interesting too. This is Chase Daniel. I agree with him a little bit. I'll talk about it after, or disagree with him a little bit. I'll talk about it afterwards. But on the stress and pressure of being a quarterback facing a scheme like this, or the San Francisco scheme that it's based on.
And I'm just excited to see him, like, go out and play in this scheme, because this scheme, this 49ers scheme is, I mean, literally they tell the edge guys to just pin your ears back and rush the passer every single snap.
Yeah, you
like,
play the run on your way to the quarterback.
Exactly. I don't care about screens. I don't care about draws. And honestly, at the end of the day, through 3 quarters or 4 quarters as a quarterback, you're like, these guys just won't stop. Yes, he's a really good passer, but his motor is insane. Like, he keeps going. I'm surprised the Vikings let him go.
Chase Daniel was surprised that the Vikings let Danielle Hunter go. Yeah. I mean, and again, you get into these situations where you want to reboot a little bit, but Chase Daniel's a 30-year-old, or excuse me, Danielle Hunter is a 30-year-old, and these are kind of ships passing in the night in terms of where they are in their team building process. The Texans are a lot further along in their team building process, all of a sudden, lo and behold, than the Vikings, who looked like the Vikings were the next big thing just a couple of years ago. Now they might have Sam Darnold starting at quarterback. But that stress that it puts on a quarterback of just those guys constantly coming after you, the fact that they have Danico Autry now and Danielle Hunter opposite of Will Anderson, Danico Autry coming and rushing inside. Honestly, I know a few of you have asked about Dylan Horton. I don't want to get overly ambitious with Dylan Horton, because obviously the cancer is the big thing, and him coming back and being healthy is the big thing. There's things to like about Dylan Horton being like a D'Amico Ryans type of guy. I disagree with Chase Daniel a little bit, and him, maybe he's exaggerating on purpose, but like D'Amico coaches these guys that give a damn about the run. And when you watch Will Anderson or John Grenard play last year, those guys are very cognizant of what their run responsibilities are. Will is very capable of doing the selfless things when defending the run, coming down and wrong arming a kick out block, all that kind of stuff. So there's a balance there, but the scheme, by virtue of playing these wide 9 defensive ends, the scheme does invite those defensive ends that even when they're playing the run, they're just careening off the edge. So if it does turn into play action or pass, like they're there to put pressure on the quarterback. And the quarterback's always got that in their mind. Not to mention, you've got to chip him more, So you're chipping Will Anderson, you're chipping Danielle Hunter, you're trying to offer protection up the middle because Danico Autry's coming up the gut. And then all of a sudden you don't have a tight end out on a route. You don't have a running back out on a route. And you inject chaos into the offense. And now I'm getting super excited about it. This is the good shit. This is the feeling I've been looking for. I've been way too analytical about this crap. It took a damn backup quarterback, Chase Daniel, to talk me into just exactly where the Texans are right now. Robert Mays points out just how rare Danielle Hunter's contract is. And you're going to be able to tell that this was probably recorded last Thursday or Friday, because Danielle Hunter's contract is even more rare than the way Robert Mays puts it right here.
Player in the NFL, defensive player, who has an almost fully guaranteed short-term contract at this age is Aaron Donald. That's it.
Pretty good.
So I think this says a lot about how rare a player he was to hit free agency and what the Texans thought of him in this process.
So Robert Mays, I love him as a writer because, he's a big time, I think he played in college, but he was a high school lineman, he's fit and skinny now. But I think when he watches film and watches guys like Danielle Hunter, he knows what he's talking about. And he knows how hard it is it's hard to get a guy who's an edge rusher still in his relative prime in free agency like this. That was how rare it was for the Bills to all of a sudden realize they had a shot at Mario Williams, because it just doesn't happen. Texans were in a spot where they had to shed salary and players. They just couldn't keep everybody, and certainly not Mario at the price that he commanded. Danielle Hunter, to get him on a 2-year contract that's almost fully guaranteed, $48 out of $49 million. Aaron Donald was the only one previously who'd had so many guarantees. But I'm 100% about the fact that they did it in 2 years. Danielle Hunter can sign a new 2-year contract with the Texans in a couple years, extend it next year, whatever it might be. But your downside is limited after the first 2 years. And this is this 2-year window where CJ Stroud is a rookie. You've got all this space. These guys talk about that a little bit more to spread it out a little bit more. But this is... Oh, okay. This is a really good point Robert makes about the number of snaps that Danielle Hunter has played over the years.
Last year he played 1,000 snaps for the Vikings, the second most snaps of any edge rusher in the NFL. The only guy who played more than him was Max Crosby. That is not going to be the case playing in Houston. That's not how they want to play their guys. You're hoping that you can get even more per down explosiveness and disruption out of him if he's playing a few less snaps.
Yeah, and that's a big point to make, because I think sometimes it's human nature. Obviously, you see that a guy like Jonathan Grenard only played about 55% of the snaps. You want to say well, gosh, if he just played 25% more snaps, he'd have 25% more production. But it's just the human body doesn't work that way. It's like in hockey, how you only go out for 60 to 90 seconds because you're grunting it out the whole time. If you try to leave somebody out there for longer than their shift, they're going to be ineffective. That happens with defensive linemen a lot when you don't rotate. Even the really, really good players, when they play 90% of the snaps, they just naturally don't have as much pop in their legs. So on a per snap basis, Danielle Hunter is probably going to be better this year. Now, so his production might be the same, but the crucial part there is that he played 1,000 snaps. That's very few defensive linemen play 1,000 snaps in a season. And he had one of his best statistical seasons. As he enters his 30s, if he's playing 70% as many snaps as he did last year, he might still actually be more productive on a per-play basis. But you've also got Danico Autry, Will Anderson, any other rookies that they bring in to rotate with those guys. And it also gives opportunities for Danico Autry to play end or inside. They're going to roll these guys through. So that part, like unlocking a better version of Daniil Hunter is very much a possibility. I'm not even just, being irrationally optimistic or anything. Like, yeah, he could take a step back, he get injured because he's in his 30s, but likewise, I see a very clear path where he actually might be an even more effective player in this scheme. To drive home the point about just what they're working with here, this extra cap space that they have with CJ on his rookie contract, Robert compares the Texans to the Buccaneers.
CJ Stroud over the next 2 seasons, 24 and 25, will count for about $18 million against the cap. Baker Mayfield on his extension will count for $50 million against the cap. So we're talking $30 million in savings for the Texans over the next 2 seasons for, again, what I believe could be upwards of top 5 quarterback play.
Yeah. So for Robert Mays, obviously very pro CJ Stroud. It is, man. I've tried to avoid thinking too much about that rookie quarterback contract window. But in the last live stream I did, I showed you that graphic of when you take away Pat Mahomes, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady, when you take them out of the equation, since 2012, 8 of the 12 quarterbacks who aren't those guys have been quarterbacks on their rookie contract. So it's still kind of a small sample size, and Peyton Manning and those guys beat some other veteran quarterbacks who aren't on their rookie contract who might made it, whatever. But it's a very, very viable way of getting to the Super Bowl if you're aggressive about it. The thing that I like about it, though, is that I think you see a lot of teams, they know that, they go for it, like the Dolphins, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, but they're also left out in the lurch with some of these guys that they got to cut, still pay dead money on, and they end up like really scrambling when they should be riding this quarterback into a new era. And I think that what they hope to do with CJ is just this. These next 2 years, you can spend a bunch of money on short-term contracts, spend a bunch of money on guys who are veterans in their 30s. And as CJ continues to improve as a quarterback, by the time he gets paid, you'll have maximized your window of opportunity in 2024 and 2025. But after he gets paid in 2026, and likely the lion's share of that money won't hit the cap until 2027, CJ keeps evolving as a quarterback, and he's the guy that, like Pat Mahomes, can make do with an inferior group of receivers one season, or maybe the next season the defense isn't as good, but you make up for that. The worst place to be is when you've got that quarterback, you've given him the contract, all of a sudden you have to start shedding salary, and you realize, oh crap, this guy's the same guy he was in year 2. Or like barely better than the guy he was in year 3. That's where I think like CJ being as mature as he is, CJ being as focused, as driven as he is, CJ, unlike some rookie quarterbacks, just knowing that there's things he doesn't know, he has a humility about him where he knows there's things he still has to figure out, and he's very open about that, and it's hard to find the people that have the right amount of confidence, but also the right amount of humility. It's a balancing act. And I think CJ has that. So I feel really optimistic that by his 4th year in the league, yeah, he's going to be a true veteran. Russell Wilson in some ways never became that next level veteran quarterback that truly, especially for a shorter quarterback, he never made the Drew Brees jump. And that's a classic case where, man, maybe if Drew Brees were as good an athlete as Russell Wilson, Drew Brees never would have made that jump either. Because like Drew Brees, by necessity, had to figure some of these things out. With Russell Wilson, he still relies on out of structure plays so much, but now he's not as good as an athlete as he used to be. And it makes it hard to really project him on into greater things. Justin Fields this year might start in on that transition if Arthur Smith can unlock kind of a few of the key things that he needs to do.